Hello, long time no see. Let's talk about Blue Origin projects for a bit because I'm pretty involved in investigating this company. I made this graphic a couple months ago and I want to explore it because at a glance it's a mixed bag and there is just some fairly conspicuous things in there and it doesn't really make sense. So let's provide you a bit of context and history and speculation. A fair bit of it's probably going to be wrong, but hopefully it will still be interesting. Too long have the Blue Origin's employees had it good with just insinuating that they work on cool programs. I will extract it from their bones. I suppose we'll start off with a discussion of the national Team HLS. The Moonlander program at Blue started off in scale with the announcement of the Moon program by the Trump admin in 2017. At this stage, Bezos was tired of seeing SpaceX get NASA money to effectively get paid to develop what they were interested in. So he decided to go in on a landing system because Blue knew at some stage that there would be a larger NASA contract to them in a couple of years, that they would be close to guaranteed to win because of their head start. It started off as a methane lander and used BE-5, which you can see that they got a NASA contract for. However, this pretty quickly got dropped for whatever reason as they moved on to the BE-7 and liquid hydrogen. They went through some design work and then teamed up with Lockheed and Northrop to go for the Option A contract. A lander with years of preemptive development and a large amount of technical heritage with a billionaire backing it, bidding the design reference. How could they lose? Well, you'll find out later. Maybe, well, actually, won't. In the meantime, one interesting refinement was that they made the lander a lot slimmer so it could fit into 5.4 meter diameter fairings to remove the requirement of launching it on New Glenn. This was because they didn't want NASA to negatively evaluate the lander because of New Glenn readiness. This, of course, had the interesting consequence of making the ladder, well, bigger. Although worth noting that the ladder is only the secondary means of getting up and down, they have a hoist for primary movement of astronauts. They end up not winning and are very upset because for the aforementioned reasons, they thought they deserved to win. A bunch of legal shenanigans later, and we're back on track. Blue matured their evolved design in Appendix N, which they complained about by the way, and this render gets released by NASA. This is the most up-to-date render we have right now, so I'm basing my assumptions of architecture on it. There's some discussion of whether bringing Boeing into the national team means a return to a 3-element architecture. I tend to think not, or at least hope not. I would guess that Boeing is contributing composite hydrolox tanks to the program, an area where they do have leading industry experience in. Anyway, the renders show 2 stages with a transfer element that looks like it's using effectively the same propulsion stage as the lander with a couple bits removed. Now, if you want to make a fully reusable lander that has a transfer element, you run into a problem at some point that to refuel the reusable transfer element, you need to send a tanker to refuel it. Okay, that's pretty obvious. This tanker will have hydrolox tanks, hydraulics propulsion, avionics, power systems, docking and refueling interfaces, and oh wow, it's just a transfer element again. And this tanker is going to be expendable because you can't really recover back to Earth without heat shields that are very heavy. So it's just easier to have an expendable transfer element and skip having refueling interfaces on it. And this transfer element could certainly be expendable, but you look at the math, right? And it's not too bad to reuse, actually. It's only 10% more propellant to the stages, and that's still within acceptable mass fractions of those stages. But then you run into the question, right? How do we get this propellant to NRHO in a manner that doesn't involve expendable tankers? Now, I have been passively watching Blue Origin's job page for a while, and clickbait come up a couple times. From all indications, it's about a reusable upper stage program. And then I see Lunar Clipper, and I'm left baffled because why would Blue want to send their reusable upper stage, or a large hydrogen stage with hydrogen propulsion, avionics, and a heat shield to the moon? Well, carrying propellant to refuel a reusable lander would be pretty useful. For the record, there's also been a SpaceX agreement between Blue and NASA for NASA Langley to do some simulation work on the Lunar Clipper heat shield options. With all of that said, I arrive at an architecture like this. Launch count, staging points, and all that are liable to be inaccurate, but this is my best guess at what Blue Origin is bidding based on available information. On a derived note, Lunar Pathfinder, the demo craft to test out a lot of the ILV infrastructure, might actually be getting built right now. With a reset in design, it's kind of hard to tell. One thing that you might want to improve to support this is New Glenn. Obviously, you would prefer to be flying when you start improving. I would have a hard time giving you any reasonable timelines for New Glenn, so I'm not going to bother. Obviously, Block 2 will come with improvements. The main thing for me is increasing performance to make up for the decreases associated with upper stage reusability. But generically, with any launch vehicle program, you expect to see these sort of performance improvements across its lifetime. The only technical decision that isn't really discussed is that they're using hydrogen peroxide monoprop thrusters for RCS on their first stage. That's a bit novel, I suppose. On to Orbital Reef. It's a very ambitious station program, 70% of the ISS volume with 3 modules. Bezos is betting a fair bit on getting that NASA contract. If he doesn't get the big NASA CLD contract, I don't think the program continues. It's just that he likely isn't that interested in taking on the billion-dollar upkeep of the station in an underwhelming market. We'll give a brief look at the contenders. We've got NanoRacks, Axiom, and Northrop. NanoRacks is already 8 months behind schedule, 15 months into the program. This is because they split from Lockheed, who were building the inflatable habitat and are now getting Airbus to be able to fix one. So at this stage, NanoRacks is pretty far behind, and I wouldn't consider them really a serious contender. That leaves Axiom and Northrop. They're kind of building similar stations. You have a classy attached pressurized cylinders with common manufacture together. Northrop have a pretty good lead here after building pressurized cylinders for a decade. They've already received $1.1 billion in Halo Gateway module contracts, which they can then leverage for significant tooling and development investments for their own station. Axiom are doing alright themselves with the $140 million contract for the additional ISS module. The hardware is progressing, but as you can probably tell, I'm giving the large advantage to Northrop to come out on top of these 3. And so we have these 3 relatively conservative designs, and then we have Reef, which is fairly absurd in scale, right? Does the Reef beat Northrop? Hard to tell, because their baseline design factors are very different. Also, a brief mention of the artificial gravity co-orbital experiment. I don't actually give it that much thought or credit. It's just the sort of thing that companies put on their proposal to bulk it out a little. Like how SpaceX proposed Dragon Lab for commercialization option for Dragon 1, but that never really came to be. And helping out Orbital Reef is Blue Ring. Now, you have to get new station modules to a station. You run into an issue of how do you dock the element because it needs active propulsion for that. So either you need something like the shuttle or Orion to deliver the module to the station, or you can have the station module have propulsion system. Blue Ring falls into the former category, a hypergolic space tug. Blue Ring is nice though, because as indicated by a recent job posting, it can serve more general satellite launch purposes in the New Glenn architecture. Some thoughts on advanced development programs, basically just an umbrella for all the new small and large programs. So the ISRU program that recently announced results in manufacturing solar cells and aluminium wires under this branch. Also, they're working on getting building materials, solar reflectors, and hydrolux propellant from lunar resources. They're also working on lunar rovers looking at this job description, although they haven't made any indication towards bidding on the LTV. More focused on the robotics side, which is a little bit interesting. I haven't really seen large NASA commitment towards many rovers for CLIPS, so maybe this is more of a resource prospecting transportation mindset, or will robotic science on the lunar surface scale in the coming years? There was also this random job posting for a service module under this branch. Service modules generally refer to a component of a crewed spacecraft. The implication here is obvious. I generally think that Blue isn't prioritizing crew capture work because of existing saturation, but who knows? It might refer to the Landers service module, or Reese, although I feel like the wording here in the job description would be different. Very peculiar. Engine-wise, yeah, there's a whole bunch here. Interestingly, a job description mentioned half a dozen engine product lines, indicating roughly 6. There's 4 that we know of, so that would make me assume that there's probably at least one undeclared engine program. To be fair, there's a couple existing engine programs that may be big enough to declare an engine product line. Two things on New Shepard. Of course, that new tail numbers are in the works, and they really want to improve upon things like turnaround time. And the seat price as of 2022 April was 1.25 million, as revealed by crypto transfers with the 2 seats that Moondao bought. The video is now over. Also, face reveal at 100 subs, so get people excited or something. Oh god, I need this. It's so painful dragging images and setting up the text just to give me a video to feed to post. Yeah.